Ik wil net voor hem veranderen. Maar dat is niet zijn laatste woorden aan hem geweest. Dat is wat ik bij je graag wil weten. Ik wil dit weten bij hem. En hij moet dit gaan voor mij zeggen.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and thank you very much for joining me here again today. I have missed you guys so much. I feel like I've been gone for a hot minute, even though it's only been like a couple of days later than usual, but I really missed you guys. So I do apologize that my scheduling and uploading has been all over the show. It has been quite a hectic couple of weeks, and it's also almost the end of the year, so everyone's pumping everything in to try and get it done before December holidays. Also, I got my hair cut and dyed. It's very strange, but I'm still getting used to it. But I'm going off on a tangent again. I hope everyone is doing very well. But today we're going to talk about a case that I actually watched while watching Carte Blanche. And if you don't know what Carte Blanche is and you're not South African, to sum it up, Carte Blanche is basically what almost all South Africans know as the end of their weekend. As soon as you hear that Carte Blanche song or that Carte Blanche intro, you know it's done. It's time to get your work bags packed, your school clothes folded, because tomorrow's work. But Carte Blanche is a show that comes on every Sunday night, and it talks about very pressing issues, very important issues that some people try and hide. Carte Blanche really tries to dig out the information. And if you see Carte Blanche coming, you see the van, you see Derek Watts, then you know you better run because you're going to be in big trouble. But even though I'm very happy to be here and happy to speak to you guys, this case was very, very hard to research, very hard to digest, because I remember watching the video a couple of months ago and having to re-watch it brought back the same emotions that I felt on that day. And I think the reason why it was so difficult is because you're kind of watching their last moments in some way. But with that being said, and me not giving away too much, let's get into today's case.
Intended for mature audiences only.
Today we're heading to an area called Klawer in the Western Cape. This is a small town situated on the bank of the Olifants River. This town is around 240 kilometers away from Cape Town, and the name Klawer comes from a clover that only grows in that area after the rains have come. Most of the residents here work in the grape farming industry, and it's a very small and close-knit town. And this case took place on the 2nd of February 2022, so earlier this year, so it is a fairly recent case. And on the 2nd of February 2022, two boys were walking around the area of Klawer and they noticed mangoes hanging from a tree in someone's garden. The boys then had a look around, they saw that no one was there, so they then proceeded to climb over the small wall, and they then took some of the mangoes. As the boys were taking the mangoes from the tree, they heard someone shouting from inside. This person was shouting in Afrikaans, as it was mostly an Afrikaans town, and they did say to leave the mangoes alone and get off their property. Also, apparently, while the boys were busy taking mangoes from the tree, they did actually see the man who lived in the home, and apparently one of the boys, his name was Jerobejin van Wyk, and Jerobejin apparently made eye contact with the man who lived inside the home, and he apparently then started mocking him while he was taking the mangoes off the tree. And this mocking and this man watching these boys take mangoes off of his tree was the beginning of the end. At the time, Jerobejin was 13 years old, and he was described as kind and a little mischievous, but all around a really good kid. And like I said earlier, the two boys were then walking around Klawer. Apparently they were looking for some tins, but then they noticed the mango tree. So the mangoes were being pulled, the mocking was happening with Jerobejin and the man inside the house. But then Jerobejin noticed that the man then shut the blinds or whatever he was looking through, and they then heard some commotion happening in the home. So the boys then decided to book it out of there. They assumed that the guy's now coming out of his house, and they assumed correctly. As the boys were walking around the block, they heard screeching of tires, and they noticed this small bakkie coming towards them. And a bakkie is like a pickup truck or like a small van, but not really. And this man inside this bakkie who was driving towards the boys, his name was Daniel Smith. And Daniel just saw absolute red and he was gunning for these boys. He not only wanted justice for these boys being on his property, the theft, but also the blatant disrespect that he felt that Jerobejin and the other boy were giving towards him. According to the residents in the area and other articles that I read, apparently the people who lived in Klawer were really tired of teenagers and young children hopping over their walls and taking things that didn't belong to them. And apparently this was kind of a suburb or residential wide problem. And it is believed that Daniel was actually really irritated that these kids kept getting away with stealing, and that's why he just saw red when he saw Jerobejin and his friend. But Daniel would later say that the only reason that he was chasing after Jerobejin and his friend was because he wanted to ask them why they thought it was okay that they were walking in the back garden, and they also felt that it was okay to just step into someone else's property. However, when Carte Blanche got hold of Jerobejin's friend, the boy who was walking with him that day, this is what he had to say.
This is Jerobejin's friend Dino. He was with Jerobejin on that fateful day when they noticed some fruit on Smith's property.
Toe sê, as ek jou vang, gaan nie weer 'n ouer sien nie. Al wat hy wou so sê.
So let's just take a step back and talk about South Africa and these small towns. Apartheid created this long-lasting effect on small towns and quite a long-lasting devastation. And obviously it's not only in the small towns, but it is quite prevalent. For example, in small towns in South Africa, back in the apartheid days, some of the farmers would not pay the laborers or the workers on the farm with money. I wouldn't say that they wouldn't pay them at all, but there was very little to none. And what the farmers would do is that they would rather pay their workers in booze or in wine or whatever the farm was growing, which obviously leads to a lot of alcoholism. There were a lot of young teenage births, and the cycle just continues. Also, the workers may not have been going to school. They probably couldn't afford children to go to school because they weren't really getting paid. So it kind of has a domino effect completely throughout all of these generations. And I assume when these boys were walking around looking for tins or cans, they were trying to make a bit of money because clearly there's not an abundance. There's not a lot of money going around in these small little dorpies or towns. But anyway, with a bit of backstory, let's get back to Daniel. So the boys are running, they're running away from this bucky at the time, and Daniel is relentless. He will not stop chasing them. And Jerobejin and his friend were weaving in between houses, they were jumping over fences, and they were also hiding in cemeteries. And the next part of this just really breaks my heart because, like I said right in the beginning, it's kind of watching someone's last steps, last moments, and it's very heartbreaking. And I really can't imagine how scared this young boy must be. My brother is younger than me, and I really can't even fathom what a young boy or even young girl or anyone must go through when they know that someone's chasing them and seriously trying to harm them. But anyway, so Jerobejin and his friend are still running away, and they kind of get to this corner of this house where Jerobejin's friend then notices that there's this big metal drum, and it looks like people were using it as a bin. So it looks like he kind of jumped into it to hide, and Jerobejin saw this and he said, "Don't worry, just keep running, don't worry." And he does tell his friend that he must keep running, he must try and get away. But as Jerobejin's friend gets into this like drum or bin, he can still hear Jerobejin run away. But then all of a sudden he hears a big thud. And there is CCTV footage of Jerobejin running away from the bucky.
Watch this exclusive CCTV footage of Smith trying to corner Jerobejin.
Roep hy my naam. Toe sê ek moet hol. Hoor ek net toa. Sien kom hy weer nie. Hoor kom ek weer nie.
Sadly, Daniel did hit Jerobejin, but he was alive. He was lying on the floor, he was trying to get up, he was a bit dazed, but he was alive. But as Jerobejin was trying to get up off the floor, Daniel came running around the bucky. He then picked Jerobejin up and then threw him in the back of the bucky. Now we have to remember, Jerobejin is young. He's only 13 years old, and he seems from pictures and videos to be slightly smaller or at least slimmer. But still, it's not the point. Daniel still hit a 13-year-old boy with his bucky. And when Jerobejin's friend heard that thud and he heard Jerobejin run away, that was the last time that he ever saw his friend again. Jerobejin's friend eventually felt brave enough to get out of the bin and run home. He did tell his parents exactly what happened, and his parents then went to tell Jerobejin's parents. Jerobejin's mom then went straight to the police station to report this incident to the police. There were reports of neglect, lack of urgency, and also Jerobian's mom said that she had to wait quite a while for a police officer who spoke Afrikaans to come and speak to her. But the search was on, and what really frustrates me is that everyone knew that Jerobian was at Daniel's house, but no one went to Daniel's house to get Jerobian out of it. The police knew that he was there, his mom knew that he was there, and also Jerobian's friend's parents and Jerobian's friend knew that he was there, but no one stepped on Daniel's property. But there were reports that Jerobian was alive when he went to Daniel's house, because once Jerobian was thrown into the back of Daniel's bakkie, Daniel then drove home, and Jerobian and Daniel then walked through the garage, and there were witnesses who saw this. Once he got inside, Daniel apparently gave him something to eat and drink, and then after this it gets really blurry and unclear. And the reason why it's unclear is because we don't know if Daniel was standing behind Jerobian or if an altercation occurred, but once Daniel handed this food and drink to Jerobian, apparently Daniel then stood behind 13-year-old Jerobejin van Wyk. He then put both hands around his head and quickly and broke Jerobian's neck. And it seems as though Jerobian was taken by surprise, and I cannot think of anything more vile.
Santi's now going to take us into Daniel Smith's house, which I'm feeling a little bit nervous about.
This is where they came through.
The garage.
Yeah, the garage. Daniel and the boy, they walked in here and walked to the kitchen. Daniel gave Jerobian a piece of bread to eat and something to drink, and that is when he broke his neck.
Smith then put the body in a chest freezer until the evening.
It then seems as though after Jerobian was in the freezer, that Daniel then went to get rid of the evidence. He then started chopping up pieces of Jerobian's lifeless body and placed them in as many pieces as he could into the fireplace, where he then lit his body parts alight.
There was body parts that showed that it was placed in a fireplace, and that is the truth, and I can show you the fireplace.
What? Put his body or parts of his body in here?
Yes.
Do you think Daniel's happy with us knowing about this?
Yeah, Daniel wants the truth to be told, because people are still looking for the body and looking for something more to bury. There's nothing more. There's nothing more.
This is it.
This is it, and he wants...
Don't hear the rest in the drain. A local municipal worker noticed Smith was tampering with the drains the day after Jerobian disappeared.
The municipal workers was busy pumping the drain when something blocked the pipe. And then they pulled out with a piece of wire, pulled out pieces of meat. It was this part, and then the hair, and a piece of one ear.
And this case really makes me so sick. It is an outpour of hatred, lack of empathy, and pure blatant murder. Because Jerobian was a boy, he was 13 years old. But luckily Daniel was arrested. At first, Daniel was only arrested for kidnapping, but later, through the investigation and through the findings of Jerobian's body parts inside the drain, he was then arrested for murder and attempted murder on Jerobian's friend. There were also reports that Daniel Smith was apparently part of the cult and that he signed contracts with the devil to sell his soul, and he signed these contracts in blood. But Daniel would not describe himself as a Satanist, but apparently he was part of the occult from a very young age. And was this part of some ritual that he needed to do this to young Jerobian? Or did he just do it out of pure hatred, pure rage, and he just wanted to hurt Jerobian? And the case has still not been closed, so Daniel is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But apparently, Daniel is currently at Valkenburg, which is a very large psychiatric hospital here in Cape Town. And he is apparently undergoing some psychiatric evaluation, and the case is just being postponed and postponed.
Even though Teresa is still grieving, she'll attend the hearing, hoping to find more answers.
Gisterand het ek wakker geskrik. Toe kom sit ek by my kind en ek sit en huil by my kind. Hy tyd waar hy man met hom besig is, het hy van my geroep. En dit wat my hart so seer maak. Want ek was nie daar om te help nie. En ek sal hom nooit vergewe nie, ek sal hom nooit vergewe nie.
And as Teresa waits for the trial to commence, perhaps now Jerobian is the one person who can unite the town of Klawer.
This case just really breaks my heart and is very frustrating. I just feel so badly for Jerobejin's parents and Jerobejin's friend. He also went through an incredibly traumatic event, and all over a mango. It was all over a mango. And I get that there's probably a bigger picture to this, and there was rage that was probably building up, but the straw that broke the camel's back was a mango. But let me know what you think down below. Let me know what your thoughts are about this case. I hope you all have a fantastic week further. Thank you very much for all your love and support, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.